everybody. Welcome to Radio Dead Air Tech Q&A. You've got questions. We've got guesses. I'm Nash. I've been doing Radio Dead Air for ages and ages. But in addition to that, I'm also an IT professional. With me, as always, my producer, Mike Gearman, who is also in IT. If you have tech questions for us, you can send those to requests at radiodeadair.com. We will attempt to answer those for you. Or you can check it out on our YouTube, Radio Dead Air Tech, and you can leave comments there in the videos. Hello, Mike. How are you doing?
Not bad, not bad. I mean, 2 days ago, 4th of July, a lot of fireworks in the area. Many of them probably illegal.
Oh, yes.
And then, of course, last night was the people who couldn't fire off all their fireworks last night.
So they had to get rid of them. Yeah.
2 nights ago, they said to fire them off last night. Yeah, it's there'll probably be some leftover fireworks still tonight and maybe even Sunday.
Mike, that's just frugal, okay? You don't let them go to waste. They're perfectly good fireworks. So just this week, I want to talk about this because it's kind of fascinating. I'm learning a whole new way of doing the stream in a very short amount of time.
There's a lot of people going through that sort of thing right now. With the Adobe thing, a number of cartoonists have ditched Adobe products and are having to relearn, new products and going, well, I hate these brushes. Maybe I can find different brushes.
Well, on my end, it's because we have had problems with my hardware mixer for a long while now. We were having issues with sudden audio dropouts, with sometimes it wouldn't stay connected to the USB, even though it was plugged in.
Yeah. Well, I will say you had, occasionally when you were talking to me, there'd be audio dropouts, but I could usually get the context from the second. The rest of it by the second that dropped out.
Well, actually, when I was talking to you, you didn't hear me through the mixer. I was going through a completely different microphone, but it was very far away from my face. So it had been giving us trouble for a very long time, and finally had enough of it. So
sure.
I got an opportunity. There was a Stream Deck Plus that was available on eBay for $125, which, considering they go for about $180, that was a pretty good deal.
As long as it works.
I'll explain why it was a deal in a few minutes, but
you had to clean it, didn't you?
You'll see. But it's one of the things, in addition to being a Stream Deck that will give me more buttons and more controls over the stream, it also unlocks Wavelink, which is a virtual mixer on the computer. And you see, going back to Windows Vista, audio in Windows it's been pretty much seamless, and most people don't really notice it.
Yes, but seamless does not necessarily mean good, because for the longest time, Windows could only handle one sound source at a time. They finally got that act together.
Yeah, that was Vista. What they changed underneath in Windows was, instead of all the sounds in one big pipe all muddled together, what Windows did was it said, this application gets its own sound lane, and this application is its own sound source, and this. So your game is its own sound source, and your browser is its own sound source. And the only time you'd ever really notice that is if you open your volume mixer, and every application has its own slider.
Yep.
Well, what Wavelink does on top of that is, because every application has its own audio source, you can plug it into Wavelink like a real mixer. Like on a regular mixer on a channel, you put like a microphone and a guitar. Everything gets its own channel, or multiple channels for some things. You can do the exact same thing, only with the virtual mixer, it's applications. So my browser gets its own channel on the mixer, and Winamp gets its own channel, and Fallout 4 gets its own channel. And that gives me so much granular control. Like right now, Discord has its own channel. Mic is coming through on its own. And not only that, it gives me access to VST plugins, which
are virtual instruments. You can do all sorts of special sound effects, or modifications. You can handle clipping, for example, in a VST. You can do compression. He could put me on reverb, delay, and chorus if he wanted to.
and also noise reduction and some other things.
Yeah.
So what I was using previously was,
don't give yourself a hernia.
This big damn thing. It is a 10-channel mixer. It is a Mackie Pro FX 10 V3. And the reason why I got this gigantic mixer when I was only using 2 channels on it is because this is the only USB mixer I could find that had an effects loop insert.
Huh.
That allowed me to use this audio compressor and noise gate and all that stuff. And I've been using this sort of setup since early 2000s. But it was complicated and cumbersome. I had to run, in order to get the audio from the computer to go through this compressor, I had to take the audio out of the back of my motherboard's audio sound card, run it through a long cable over to the mixer. So it would go back through the USB connection and the audio mixer to the computer again. And that introduced problems like ground loops, and it was just fucking unwieldy. I can show you here how unwieldy. This is all the cables that were removed in changing out the setup. All of these. There are ground loop eliminators in here, and there's power sources, and there's just the whole thing. Just zzz. Yeah,
well, the good news, and all this stuff, but all your stuff still works, right? All that stuff still works?
Yes. I've had to learn, and I've had to rebuild. But I can show you here.
When I was saying all your old stuff still works, so you could eBay it to get.
Oh yes, I'm going to be eBaying it, because that'll give me back. Fuck, I'd probably eBay that thing for $200, and that'll give me back the cost of the Stream Deck plus some more. This is what my setup looks like now. We have removed. Big mixer used to sit over there. You can see the Stream Deck. We'll get a closer shot of the Stream Deck itself. There it is. The Stream Deck Plus is new because, well, new-ish. Instead of just having the regular Stream Deck buttons, it has these knobs. They not only are they buttons too, they also allow you to control audio levels. This is effectively my new mixer. And while there are only 4 knobs, there is a capacitive touchscreen just above it. You can swipe it, and that brings up a whole new page, which new functions can be assigned to new knobs. So I can just, it's infinite scroll. So I can just.
So while you've got 4 knobs, you've got pages and pages of what those knobs could actually do.
Yeah, and the buttons too. It's really nice.
And of course, the trick is remembering which page a given knob setting is on. By the way, if this plays in the UK, this has whole different meanings.
Yes, it does. But it's a much simplified setup. I'm just going, my audio interface is a Focusrite Scarlett 2nd Gen that I've had for a while. It's not the fanciest, but it's just a way to get the microphone into the computer with some pretty decent preamps on it. And yeah, it's so far today we've been testing it out, and it worked fairly well. It's had a couple little hitches here and there, but so far fairly good. I'm also, another thing I'm having to get used to, which I demonstrated to Mike before we got on the air, is now I have access to a monitor channel. I can set certain audio sources so that the stream mix, which is the other channel, y'all on the stream, you can't hear them, but I can. So if I turn the monitor on for Mike, but not the stream mix, I can hear him, you can't. And then I flip it around and I turn on the
Why would you keep the stream from hearing my dulcet tones?
Sorry, what'd you say? Buttons. No, but it's useful that we can, like, while y'all are while the stuff's going playing in the background, we can get ready and we can talk before we actually go live, like professionals and shit.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah. It's a nice newer setup. Now, the catch I was getting to, I put the Stream Deck, you can see it right there. It's not on its stand. I actually have a mount for it that hooks it to a camera arm. One of those those cheap little $10, $15 magic arms you get off Amazon.
Yeah.
So it's mounted right there because the mount that came with it, and this is even after I've cleaned it up some, was covered in super glue. Just soaked in it.
Well, Nash, what I'm going to say there is, of all the things it could be covered with,
true,
super glue is at least okay. They were trying to affix things to it.
Yeah. The
badly.
problem is, the problem is, this is ABS.
So most of these things that remove super glue are going to remove the ABS as well.
Melt right through it. So the only way I'm going to get this off is when I have time, I'm going to have to sand off the super glue and then polish the plastic back up with like Scratch X or something. Because I'm going to have to use my high grit, just like if I was polishing a 3D print. Yeah.
Or you could see if someone could make you a metal bracket the same size.
Well, no, I mean, I've got it mounted now. It's just, I'm probably not going to use this thing. But yeah, this was the catch. So this got me $50 off. And it didn't include a box. Big whoop.
Oh, darn.
Oh, darn. Yeah. I don't have the box. I even got they did give me the nice, I mean, I'm not using it because I have my own, but that's a much longer cable. They gave me the nice Elgato branded, braided USB cable, USB-C to USB-A. Which is funny. They're changing everything to USB-C, but this is only a USB 2.0 device, which is it's a little silly.
So it's got a connector on there that would provide what it needed, but they don't have the internals to actually really make use of that connector.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, that was just me wanting to talk about that because I thought it was interesting, and hopefully going forward, this will give me some more options, some more flexibility, and it'll be a little more reliable than using that old hardware mixer, because I think there's a short in it. I'm gonna have to open it up and pull out my soldering iron before I sell that to somebody, because I think one of those mute switches I have on it has a short. Wait. All right, let's get to our news first before we get to our questions. We have a few of those. First of all, shit we've been telling you for a long time.
Yes, in the shocking absolutely nobody category, unless you're an MBA, the AI industry needs to earn $600 billion, that's with a B.
With a big old B.
To pay for the hardware spend. Now, companies like NVIDIA that are producing these cards and components that they're using are like, no, we don't care if you ever make money.
Yeah, they'll just keep taking the cash because it's a gold rush. They're selling picks and shovels.
Yeah.
And keep in mind,
I'd say it's closer to they're selling the hard-boiled eggs for $1 type of thing, because when the bubble bursts, and it will burst, a lot of this gear is not going to have a secondary use.
Now, some of the CUDA core stuff with NVIDIA will kind of transfer, but nothing that will require what it could do. We will have far too much horsepower for any given task.
I mean, when the bubble well and truly bursts, I think you'll be able to pick up, some of these companies are going to go right bankrupt, right hard. Not Microsoft. But
they're gonna take it though. They're gonna take it on the chin.
Yeah. Someone might be able to pick up enough of these CUDA core cards on eBay, or a high-tech version of, a higher tech version of eBay, sell whatever company they use to sell bubble burst stuff on, to build their own real cool supercomputer that they won't really have much to do with, but
you could upscale Toy Story to 16K in about 2 seconds. It's going to be like how there's going to be some effects horsepower out there.
There'll be someone who does something, but that we'll be able to look back and go, okay, how much? Okay, you bought them at 10% of the cost. Okay, fair enough.
To get into the meat of what this is going about, Sequoia Capital wrote up a report. They ran figures, and they believe that AI companies are going to have to make $600 billion a year to cover infrastructure costs. Now, notice that's not profit.
No.
That is just to stay in place, to stand still. It costs them $600 billion per year. Who is it? What capital? I forget. Dang it! Tip my tongue. Let me check Ed Citron. He probably wrote it down so I can remember it. But there was another report came out. I didn't link. I read it after I sent you the news stories. But there's Ed Zitron. Ed Zitron, you can find him on Blue Sky and Twitter. He writes about this stuff all the time, and he's very angry, and I love it. Let's see. Where is that article? No. Well, it was another large capital company. Maybe put it on Twitter. Did he put it on Twitter? Here I am, super prepared. Look at me. I'm the best. There we go. There's Zitron. I think he put it. Yeah, he put it on Twitter. Let's see here. Go down through. Yes, this is from Goldman Sachs. They are figuring that
we're not talking about non-reputable companies here.
No.
So.
These are people who make the investments and tell people where to invest. They're saying the tech industry is too complacent in its assumptions that costs will decline substantially. They are saying that they don't believe it's capable of solving complex problems.
Nope.
They don't actually think there is no killer app. The bull case is they somehow figure it out. A miracle happens. Or simply a bubbles that take a long time to burst.
I believe we call this underpants nose.
A little bit, yeah. Just this is not and again, nobody's making a profit right now. Not for want of trying.
Well, no. No one's making a profit.
Thank you, Kel. Thank you, Kel.
NVIDIA is, of course, making a massive profit on the components. And other companies that are making the components. I mean, even the guy who's selling them the enclosures, the rack-mounted stuff, the racks to put them in, is probably turning a nice little profit.
Yeah. All right, let me change. I'm sorry, I forgot. I forget something always. I forgot to change it back to talk show. Let me flip that over there. Sorry, everybody. Appreciate that. But yeah, this is Now, I was saying earlier, I was talking about this when I first started setting up my stuff on the Fallout stream. There are, and we've said this before, there are use cases for AI. For example, you're hearing one of them right now. And by AI, I mean pattern recognition software. I'm running a plugin through my mixer that is pattern recognition AI noise removal. It can hear in the background. It can figure out what noise needs to go and what noise needs to stay. It can analyze it in real time. Not very complicated. And it's effectively a very advanced noise gate, which is technology we've had for a while. It also does not require a lot of horsepower. It does not require a gigantic data center. It does not require all of the graphics cards in the world. It's running quite comfortably in the background on my computer. And it's also not worth $600 billion. It's worth money. It's a function. It's like, something that people need every day. It's like, people will need computers. They'll need cell phones, but they're not going to be spending hundreds and thousands of dollars every single year for these things. That's what they're expecting with the AI industry. They're expecting people to give up way more money than any of this, even the stuff that's useful. And that's what I'm talking about. There are some of these things that are useful. They're not just the gibberish generators. But even then, it's not worth this much.
Yeah, for example, I've said this before on the show. For this sort of thing, let's call it what it is, advanced pattern matching. There are a lot of medical applications that are really useful and can be really valuable for cancer screening, for things like that. But that's not what any of these companies are doing. They're trying to find a magic app rather than something nice and stable and solid that would save lives.
No,
we want to do something cooler than saving lives.
Well, I mean, honestly, they don't really care what the app is so long as people give them money every month for it. Recurring subscription fee. They're trying to live service this thing, which is hilarious. But anyway, it's right we're reaching the point where even the money people, the adults in the room, like Sequoia and Goldman Sachs, are going, guys, maybe this isn't working. So
maybe.
Other news, actually back to hardware news. This is actually kind of interesting. With the Ryzen 7, the Ryzen 7000 version of the X3D chips, the 7800 X3D, 7950 X3D, 7800 X3D, those, because of the way they were built, because of what it could do heat-wise, because of the construction, and it would have an issue on the 3D stacked RAM, you couldn't overclock them.
Yeah.
You pretty much, they were at a fixed, you can undervolt them.
To be fair, in most cases, you wouldn't need to overclock them.
No.
But there were people who wanted to.
Well, now it looks like AMD may be deciding for the 9000 X3D CPUs that they're probably early next year, I think.
Okay.
Because 9000 series is this year, so X3D will probably follow on the tail of that. They're going to allow it to be unlocked. It's rumored they're going to be unlocking it. And I believe this rumor for one main reason. Intel's going to come out with a whole new architecture. They're going to come out swinging. Supposedly this Arrow Lake and Meteor Lake, they are going to be a big revision of how Intel CPUs work. And they may get the jump over AMD. So by allowing people...
It's a may. But keep in mind that Intel, of course, has not had a massive increase in performance in a while.
But even this would allow them to say, even if Intel does come out with something that's like a freaking uppercut, this would allow AMD to say, okay, we already have the X3D frame improvements. It's the fastest gaming processor in the world. This will allow it to go even farther beyond what we already had. And that's already going to have IPC improvements, but being able to overclock it gives them a little ace in the hole for when Intel comes out. Now, understand that this is just a matter of bragging rights. There's no practical purpose to this. Potentially, you can get a stable overclock this way.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, this is to get a stable overclock so you can get 200 frames per second in Fortnite. There's no good reason to do that. There's no real need for that.
Just bragging rights.
It's the difference between 190 frames per second and 200 frames per second. This is entirely, one company wants to be able to say, we have the fastest... Grady, what are you doing? You just sort of stick it there. We have the fastest gaming CPU in the world. That's what NVIDIA and AMD, when AMD used to be competitive on video cards, used to go back and forth and say, we have the fastest video card in the world. No, we have the fastest video card in the world. And then AMD shit the bed. But I find this interesting. Maybe a little bit of a hedging of bets on AMD's part, approaching the release of Intel stuff. We'll have to see what Intel brings to the table, because their stuff's coming later this year, I think. They started showing things off at Computex. So, and the last one this week, as if Roku has not screwed up enough.
And agreed. And this is a screw up that they've done before. They did this in 2020, and now they're doing it again. So what they've done is they pushed out an update to TVs that may not actually support the update and can't turn it off.
Yeah, what Roku isn't just those little set-top boxes. I mean, you've obviously been through a store and seen the Roku logo on TVs. Roku actually builds those little boxes into certain TVs. They license it and they have their software on there. What Roku did was they pushed out an update that turned on motion smoothing, and there's no way to turn it off.
Right.
If you're not familiar with motion smoothing, or if you are someone's grandparents and have no idea it even exists, motion smoothing is a technology that takes a film, which films run at about 24 frames per second, and it extrapolates and adds frames to it in a way to bring it up to 30 frames per second. And suddenly everything looks like it's a soap opera.
Yeah, it makes it look really weird if you're not used to it. And if you don't like it, you know, on a number of things, you can turn it off.
Mm-hmm. But in fact, there's a campaign by some celebrities a while back to get you to teach you how to turn off motion smoothing, because it was just that crap. It's good. It's not great. Seth points out it's good for sports because it does deal with motion blur, and sports are fast moving. So like the footballs and the hockeys and such.
So I'll say most sports. It will do nothing for cricket.
Nothing for cricket. Nothing can do anything for cricket, but you know, we're going to get letters. It's great for curling.
I hope so.
It's the idea that part of what this article points out, this is by William Joel over at The Verge, and it makes a good point. It seems like the people at Roku don't understand what their customers actually want out of their Roku. Like, for example, real people who are really into film and watching stuff on TVs, they like having granular control and be able to not have to deal with stuff like motion smoothing.
And then some people, real film people, really like watching it in the original basic way it was filmed. So if at 24 frames per second, that's fine with them. That's what they prefer.
Yeah, it's because videotape is 30 frames per second. It goes it's weird. It goes back to, I believe it was 30 frames per second here in the United States, and I believe it was 25 frames per second for PAL and overseas, because our electricity runs at 60 hertz, and their electricity is 50 hertz.
Yep.
And it has to deal with televisions and the frame. It's all tied together. It's wild. We don't have to deal with that anymore because we've left analog signals behind. Everything's digital now, but films have always been 24 frames per second, so they keep making them that way. There was this, I think they did the first movie of the Hobbit trilogy. They did that. They filmed it also in 60 frames per second. And that looked weird as hell. Because 60 frames per second is it's not what you normally watch. So that looked weird as shit for a movie. Everybody's like, people were walking out of the theater. They couldn't exactly put a finger on why it was so bad. They just knew it was bad. Anyway, this is a lot. This is kind of a symptom of what's going on a lot around a whole bunch of the tech industry.
Part of it also seems to be like they just said, "Oh, we're going to push this out to everything," and it may be that some of the devices are just not handling it well as well.
Yeah,
and I have that situation at work. I'm going to stag here very slightly. We basically have two categories of laptops at work. One has 2 USB slots. That's it's 2 USB ports, USB-C ports. Get the whole thing out. And that's actually the older computer. The newer computer has 1 USB-C port. But the powers that be further up the chain from me pushed out a firmware update to all the computers that only really applied the one with the single USB-C port to make it take full advantage of the USB-C port. Problem is, the older computers with 2 now sometimes think they only have 1. They will power off either one of them, but they won't provide video back to the port replicator.
Yeah. Hooray.
And it's like, we started getting tickets on this, and I'm like, okay, what I need you to do, unplug it from, which port is it? Which USB-C port is in, front or back? It's in the back. Unplug it from the back, move it to the front. Hey, that works now. Okay, that works now. Tomorrow, it may be you have to move it from the back front. Because they get in some sort of little race condition there. And whichever one wins the race is the one that can do data.
Charlie's trying to climb up the back of the chair to get at Grady right now. So, because they're little assholes. But yeah, it's just kind of a symptom of what's going around in the industry about the people who are making these things and the people who are directing how they get released.
Yeah. They're just making let's release a feature so we can say we released a feature.
Hi.
But did anyone actually ask for the feature?
Does everyone want attention right now? Does every single one of you want attention? Oh my God. Where's Sarah? Why can't you go bother Sarah right now? You want to be on the camera. Okay.
Okay, so you got 2. Where's the third?
Oh, Lumi doesn't do this sort of stuff normally. Unless she's hungry, then she'll come and stand on the chair and stare at me. She'll stand on one of my armrests and just look at me until she gets fed. All right, that's the get away from that. That is not for you. Stop trying to steal things, you little klepto kitty. Go on. That's it for the news this week. Now it's time to get to your questions. And we got a couple. Let's see here. We're gonna start with Daryl has one this week. Hello, Nash and Mike. I upgraded my studio mic to a Shure SM7B. It's a good mic. A while back, and it's been great for recording playing voiceover, but I've been playing with singing and playing the guitar, and the need for a preamp became clear when I can so easily drown myself out. I've been using a Zoom LiveTrack L8 USB mixer, if that makes any difference, but using the mixer to boost the mic is clipping, when I come even close to matching my guitar or the pre-recorded music. Do you have any advice for what I should look for in a microphone preamp? I don't think I need anything fancy, and while there are $20 or $30 models I saw with a brief look, I'm going to assume they're not what I want, considering ones from brands I recognize start at $99 and go up from there. Okay. Well, first of all, considering this is a dynamic mic and not a condenser, let me double check. I'm pretty sure it's a dynamic mic. Dynamic. The different.
I've always liked PreSonus's preamps. That's me, but.
The PreSonus is nice. No, it's a dynamic. That's a dynamic mic. Dynamic mics, if you're not familiar, the big main difference, if you just boiling it down to brass tacks, dynamic mics are great to go on the road. They don't require power. They last forever, but they lack some body to them. This is a condenser mic right here. It's very nice, but it's also sensitive. Kind of fragile. You can't really bang it around too much, and it requires 48 volts of phantom power. Now these have some advantages. There's advantages, disadvantages. Adding a preamplifier, especially one that takes advantage of that 48 volts of phantom power instead of using that, will boost the sound without boosting the gain. There's a difference between gain. There's gain, there's volume, it's so much. There's so much. That's why there are people who have degrees in this shit. When it comes to buying equipment, you think you need to get the expensive shit, when in fact we've reached this weird era. I've noticed this with guitar pedals in particularly. You can go on eBay And you can find, or not eBay, you can go to Amazon, you go anywhere, and find like super cheap clones of like the really expensive guitar pedals. Like guitar pedals can go crazy expensive, but on average, they're somewhere between $100 and $200 for the name brand ones. But if you go on Amazon, you'll find companies that have these knockoff clones and they're selling them for 20, 30 bucks. That's because a lot of there's mystique and the idea of mojo behind audio equipment that is very much tied up in branding. When in fact, a lot of it is just a basic circuit. And if you build it right, you can barely tell the difference. There are some good, like pricey ones, like PreSonus does one. There's a very simple one called Cloud Lifter, but it's 150 bucks.
Yeah, the PreSonus preamp is also 150.
Yeah, and those are nice. They've got bells and whistles. I mean, actually, the Cloud Lifter is fairly. It just plugs in line with your microphone, and that's it. It just adds I think it just adds a raw amount of gain to your signal. If it were me personally, just out of curiosity, I would try one of those $30 ones. I looked on Amazon and saw some of those. Just for me, I like having a gain control on the preamp. Some of those inline ones are just plug it in, they give you a set amount of gain, which that's cool, but it's not, I like having more control than that. So some of those have the gain control on there. That's kind of what I would sort of shoot for, not just the basic inline ones. It's really whatever works to your ear. You really, I wish there were more opportunities to try these things. I mean, Guitar Center gives you a chance to try a little bit of stuff, but for most people, like there's so many different audio applications, and A-Bing them is even harder too, because putting two next to each other and being able to hear why one is better over the other one. You guys be good. Like it's very easy. You get two televisions. You walk into a store, there's two televisions right next to each other. They've got them on display. You can see one's picture versus the other. It's very clear which one is the better picture.
Yeah.
But with audio stuff, it's all, it changes with your environment. It changes with the equipment that's plugged into it. It's so subjective. I would look at some of those Amazon reviews and see if there are anyone's just say this stinks, don't touch it. Some of them might just have the basic utility you need. Like some preamps, they're called warmer. They're more rounded. Sonically they sound richer and fuller. That's, even though these words have like everyone has their own idea of what these terms mean in audio, because it's just how it is. If it were me, I would try a few things. If you're looking for solid, definitely names, PreSonus is one of those names. That's for preamps.
Focusrite.
Cloud Lifter is one.
I think Focusrite does a good preamp as well, don't they?
Focusrite, yeah, I'm not sure if that. Well, I mean, yeah, they probably do. I haven't looked. Let's see.
Let's take a look. Mic preamps, yes, they do.
Right. Yeah. Preamp.
Now, admittedly, it looks like most of their preamps are way, way, way overkill for what you would need.
Oh yeah, they're crazy. But yeah, mic preamps. Let's see, standalone mic preamp. Oh yeah, they're oh, those are crazy expensive. Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's see, even the Scarletts are like, yeah, 8-channel mic preamp. Yeah, you don't need that. You don't need that. So honestly, just try some of the cheaper stuff. See what you can find that works. If there's any overwhelming nagging problems to them, if you don't sound right, good news is you can return most of these things. They'll take them back. Amazon's got generous returns, so you can try it out, say, nah, this isn't working, and swap something else. It's mainly what sounds good to your ears. So, all right, next up, this is from David R. Hey, Nash and Mike and Floofs, this one is weird. I don't know what's happening. When I plug my headphones into my speakers, everything's fine. Everything sounds normal. When I unplug them, the speakers themselves have what I think is a 60 cycle hum. That feels backwards to me because I would figure the headphones would have the hum, but not the speakers because the headphones aren't grounded unless I'm misunderstanding. In any event, what can I do here? Speakers are a Logitech Z213 and the headphones are just regular earbuds I got at Walmart. I don't remember the brand. I don't think these are really expensive speakers either, so that's good.
No, it's a $44 set.
Yeah, they're nice, but they're not like, oh god, the bank is broken forever. Yeah, they're nice little set. They're 2.1 desktop computer speakers. All right.
What I suspect is that there's an internal connection that's not being reset when you pull your headphones.
Potentially, yeah. When you plug your headphone jack into a headphone jack on these speakers, there is a switch in there. It's inside that when there's something plugged into it, it turns on. And when there's something unplugged, it turns off. That's how it determines whether, it sends audio to the headphones or not. It might not be turning back off properly. This could also be a case of a ground loop, which, even though you plug in the headphones and they sound fine, it might still be. You haven't mentioned whether you tried your speakers as a different outlet. A good way to help diagnose a ground loop is plug it into something else. Take it off the whatever outlet's on, try it on a different one. Ground loops it's an audio issue that happens with the wiring in your house or wherever it's plugged in that potentially sets up a loop on the grounding, and that loop can set up a 60 cycle hum that becomes audible. That's the buzzing you hear in the background. There are ways to deal with it if you don't have a good solution or a good place to put it. There are 3.5 millimeter ground loop breakers that you can get. They're very cheap. They're like $5. And since this is computer speakers, it's 3.5 millimeter, so it's standard. If that doesn't take care of it, yeah, there may be an internal issue with it, like Mike said. Because if you unplug those speakers and that switch that's connected to the jack isn't turning off, well, then it's still trying to output to the headphones. Wouldn't that just shut off the speakers? Well,
it depends on
yeah.
Part of it depends on how their internal connections are. I mean, it could just be wired weird, and some part of it's turning on and part of it's not.
Yeah. So the first step I would take to diagnosing this is try a different outlet. Because 60, if it sounds like 60 cycle hum, if you think it sounds like 60 hertz, the fact that you kind of know what that term that means, I guess you might know what it sounds like. That's the first thing there I think of is ground loop. Even though you're plugging your headphones in, I don't know why it escapes the ground loop there. Maybe that switch when you plug it into the headphone socket does something with the internal circuitry. But it sounds like a ground loop. It does sound like
the first thing that comes to mind with that was never underestimate the ability of someone to wire something up weirdly.
That's true. Oh my, yes.
Back when I was at university, we had senior design classes, and we were breadboarding stuff. And as a practical joke, one of the teams went over to another team's breadboard one day while they were out and moved one wire, one position. And it took the other team 3 hours to troubleshoot
it. That's evil.
It was not my team. It was not my team that did that, nor was it my team that was receiving on that. We were just present when it happened and didn't stop.
That could start a fist fight. That's how evil that is.
That could.
That's the sort of thing that will end in rage and screaming. But
my recollection is that the person who did it to the other team at about hour 2 went over to assist and found it quite quickly. Of course.
Oh, here's your problem. He's a genius. No, he's an asshole. He's an asshole genius. Anyway. This next one is from Steve G. He writes, "Hi, Nash and Mike. I have an old monitor I've held on to for a long time because it's a 3D monitor. Finding a replacement seems like it would be difficult." Yeah, they literally do not make those anymore.
No.
It's a Samsung T27A950, which back in the day, this is like a 12-year-old monitor. Back in the day, that was pretty nice. It was all the features, all the bells and whistles and shit. A week ago, I had pulled it out to actually watch a 3D movie, but when I turned on, the picture slowly faded out and the monitor turned off. I left it alone while I looked some stuff up online to see if I could find out why it was doing it or if there was a replacement on eBay. There isn't. But when I came back to it a few hours later, it came back on again. Stayed working for another 15 minutes before it faded out and turned off. I know what's doing this. I know exactly what's doing this.
Can I make a guess before you tell us?
Go ahead.
Capacitor.
I don't think I can replace this, so it would be possible to fix it. I know monitors are hard to fix because they're kind of meant to be thrown away. But if there's a chance it can be repaired, I'll take it. Does it sound like it's possible to repair? Yes, but it's not going to be cheap. What is happening here is, given the age of the device and the symptoms you're having, which is power that slowly fades off, what it sounds like to me is that the electrolytic capacitors in the monitor have gone to the great capacitor heaven in the sky. Electrolytic capacitors are a weird little component. Not only do they store an electrical charge that makes them dangerous, depending on how much voltage is stored in them, they can store electrical charge for years sometimes, depending on the type, if they're not properly discharged. Not only can they store, they sort of act like, little reservoirs for electricity, and they allow more electricity to go to certain parts of the circuit than would otherwise be provided from the wall outlet. That's what they beef up the circuit in some places. Also, in other areas, they're used as filtration to keep that hum and noise. Okay. All of us are using alternating current power from the wall these days. That's it didn't always used to be that way, but modern 21st century, everything is alternating current.
Because alternating current transmits better long distance than direct current.
However, almost all of our electronics are direct current. So what has to happen is there's a transformer that acts as a to take the alternating current and provide direct current output. That's what most power supplies on these devices are. However, depending on the electronics in question, that conversion can lead to fluttering in the power supply, or it can lead to noise that shows up in the circuit. That's where the capacitors come in. They act as reservoirs. They buffer that power and prevent that flutter, and so those are filter caps. What it sounds like, the reason we're saying capacitors is electrolytic capacitors are sort of unique among electronic components in that they actually go bad. Some other components do too, but the main one that goes bad is electrolytic capacitors. There's when they say electrolytic, there's actually a substance inside them that is an electrolytic.
And that substance can degrade. It can leak out. It can solidify, which any of these things can cause the capacitor to stop being as good, or even being a capacitor at all.
Or it can even this has been like a slayer of classic Macintoshes. It can spew, and sometimes the electrolytic that spews out is corrosive. So it can eat away at other components on the board. It can eat away at electrical traces. It can ruin old devices. There are tons of old Macintoshes that are just absolutely destroyed because electrolytic capacitors just went off like a little freaking geyser. Their batteries too. Batteries also have a problem with that in those old systems. In any event, you can fix this. You just have to replace the electrolytic capacitors. It's easy to tell which ones they are. They swell up. They look weird. They may have some sort of discoloration on them. They look like
top
little
of them may have
cans.
popped off.
Yeah.
The problem is finding the technician who knows how to replace them and matching the right capacitor, because sometimes they're really weird values.
Yeah, a great place to get components like that is Mouser. Mouser sells pretty much just about every electronic component you can think of. Trying to find a good picture to show you what we're talking about by electrolytic capacitor. There are a couple of different forms of them. Typically, the one that's most common is the one that looks like a little beer can. Where is it? Give a picture. Give a picture. View image. There we go. Bring it over here. See. And new shot. I'm going to put this on a button eventually, but yeah, the most common type is this one, is the one down in the lower right-hand corner of the picture. That is the most common type of electrolytic. However, all of those other form factors are also electrolytic capacitors. And typically, if you have very good eyes, you can read the values on them. However, sometimes you can't read the values on them. Sometimes they put them in the circuit in such a...
Yes. Sometimes they're just not printed on there because they go, no one's going to be taking this apart.
Or sometimes, I've seen quite often, they'll put electrolytic capacitors in the circuit turned in such a way that they're right up against another component and you can't read the label.
Yeah, sometimes right up against another capacitor. Now,
yeah,
the part that makes this difficult is, again, finding a technician who is willing and able to do this and can get the parts.
You're going to have to find, if you have like TV repair or someone who does that sort of repair available to you, because what it's going to involve is, and it's not going to be cheap. I'm going to tell you right now, unfortunately, this is not a cheap process. What it's going to involve is they have to take typically it's the power supply in your monitor, though it might be other parts of it have electrolytics too. Yeah, why we're telling you this, why it's electrolytic capacitor. Those capacitors aren't holding the charge anymore. That's why it's powering up, but then it can't hold it, and eventually it peters out. The electrolytics are failing. You're going to have to remove them all from the circuit board. That means you're going to have to go through and desolder every single one, clean the circuits out, be very careful not to damage the traces, find the ones you need as replacements, order them, because there is no way in hell you are finding these anywhere local. The last place most people could find this stuff was Radio Shack. Well, if you're in America, that don't exist no more. It's all online for finding this stuff. If you do manage to get the stuff, you're going to need soldering skills to do this. And that's however much per hour. Here's the funny part. The capacitors themselves will cost you pennies.
Yes. I mean, assuming you can find the right values.
Like these sort of capacitors are 15 cents, 25 cents. They are cheap. They are just easily to find.
Yeah.
What's going to hit you is going to be the labor cost, because this is a very labor intensive repair. Okay, I've never had to repair something like this, but it wouldn't surprise me that if it's high double digits per hour. Yeah, I would wager there are 10 or more of these in the circuit. Once one starts going bad, it's generally a best practice to accept that they're all bad, because if one's gone bad, the others might have gone bad. They're just not visible. Or if there's not one in there visible, you don't know which one's bad, so you kind of got to shotgun it and take them all out. This also happens. This doesn't just happen this happens in a lot of older electronics. You find it in old consoles, a lot of old computers with they have tantalum capacitors that also start failing and they have to be replaced. This happens quite a lot. Anything that's, once you hit 10 years old, you run the risk of electrolytics starting to fail. Not always. Some will run like champs for ages and ages, way past their assigned.
It's one of those things where they, when they test components, where they say, okay, this has a mean life of 10 years. That means whatever testing they did, however many times they cycled power, whatever, they said, okay, we did this on, say, 10,000 of these components, and only one failed. We extrapolate from this data, say 10 years. So half of them will fail at 10 years or something like that. Some of them are going to be on the bell curve out there at 20 years, 30 years still going, assuming that you're still using that kind of thing. And there are some components that just last forever. You want to see this sort of thing, you look at World War II military stuff that is still in use, usually at museums. But it still works because it was built that way.
To make this stuff even more confusing, there's a completely different type of capacitor. Propylene or polypropylene or different types. They look orange, big orange blob capacitors. Those last forever. Those are hard to kill. If they either last forever or they go bad and you just replace it. But they're also capacitors. They just function a little bit differently. It's weird. But yeah, the good news is, yes, it can be fixed. Okay. That's the one good part. It's just not going to be cheap. If this costs, I would say, given the labor that would be involved, and $200 easy, if not more.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And if it's your favorite monitor, you want to keep it forever, yeah, that might be worth it to you.
I mean, just the problem here is it's 3D, and there's no, for a lot of 3D films, there's no, we have a 3D TV, but you can't buy, if you actually care about watching films in 3D, like Avatar, that actually, I mean, whether you like whether you care for the movie or not, Avatar is a very different experience when you watch it in 3D. So having access to a 3D for some people actually matters. If that's valuable enough to you, yes. But anyway, to sum it up, yes, you can get it repaired, but it's going to be expensive. That is the nice upside of this. The best I can tell you is good luck with it, but the good news is, yes, they can fix it. They can repair it. They have the technology. So, all right, I'm going to check and see if anything else came in while we were talking. And that is a nopers. All right, that's everything for this week. All right, folks, we'll be back next Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern. If you have tech questions for us, go ahead and send those to requests at radio.air.com, or if we're on our YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section, and we will help you out with all that. Till next time, for Mike and myself, we'll see you later. Good night.